Hey folks, Nick here from another BookTube channel. Today, taking a look at the Goon, specifically the Goon number 39. I have talked about the Goon on this channel before and how much I love it. It is a wonderful blend of humor and like 1920s gangster like movies mixed with supernatural monsters and science fiction and like H.P. Lovecraft type stuff. Like it is a weird, eclectic mix. And it all works really, really well. And it was only a matter of time before I did a video on the Goon. I don't know that I expected it to be this issue, but I read this somewhat recently, and it stood out to me as something that was a lot of fun and other people might want to see. So this is the Eric Powell basically coming for the throat of the superhero comics industry, the big two of Marvel and DC specifically, where he is rebooting the Goon, quote unquote, as a superhero to fit today's modern sensibilities. Although this issue is from 2012, but I think a lot of the stuff in there still kind of rings true today. We could see all the gimmicks on the cover already. I love the call out to Hey Kids, pointless gimmicks inside. The call out to Hey Kids comics, the old slogan that used to appear on spinner racks. Collector's edition, buy 5 or 4 for a buck when it's in the corner bin next month. First 39th issue. Really not playing any kind of subtlety towards the constant rebooting and the constant gimmicks of the superhero comics industry to try to sell their product rather than creating something that's actually interesting to read. Mentions of costume changes on the cover, a new origin for the Goon, plus the introduction of new multicolored Goons. A lot of fun. So let's dig in and let's see the actual comic content. It opens with this message from Eric Powell, the creator, who explains that it's harder than ever for creator-owned comics to compete for shelf space. So you have to be willing to change in order to satisfy the wants and needs of the reader. And it's clear by the overwhelming and unwavering sales of the big two that the Goon needs a facelift to keep up with its competitors. And he's got a very charming caricature of himself at the drawing board. So you could see he's also not averse to poking fun at himself as well, if he's willing to portray himself in such a an unflattering way. So the comic opens with a more typical Goon setup, which is where his little pal Frankie runs in saying that a whiskey truck fell over. Now all the hobos are playing King of the Mountain for cases of hooch. And this page here is what you expect from the Goon in terms of art style, coloring. So if you've never read a Goon comic before, this is what you're used to. And you can see what the remake of it is on the next page there. Rather than being interested in the whiskey truck that fell over, the Goon starts talking about how he needs to tell Frankie a secret, that his origin is not what he told him in the past. And in truth, his scarred face was just a disguise. He's actually a great warrior from an alien world. And he's got his very fancy new superhero outfit and uses a lot of big fantasy words, talking about the evil lord Voltrona Thongor. His planet was destroyed and he fell to Earth, and he's got this thunder hammer as a weapon and the codpiece of power. And he asks Frankie if he wants to team up with him and be his sidekick. And of course he does, because, you've gotta. And then we're in full, 90s comic mode. I will say, as great as Eric Powell's art is, and I do think he's one of the finest cartoonists and just comic artists working today, I don't think he goes far enough with his 90s art here. I want to see a lot more cross-hatching. I want to see a lot more pockets, pockets and pouches, to really sell how if you want to make fun of the comic industry for forcing custom changes, pushing things too far, then lean into when the comic industry was at the height of its ridiculousness. And he mentions they've got to follow the guidelines now that they're going to be a proper superhero comic. There's also sprinkled throughout these secrets of the comic book prose revealed. First of all, this is a deep cut. The comic artist here be having the green face mask with these wavy lines. So this was back in, I would have to say, the 90s. It had to have been. There was a TV show that was, I think it was like The Magician's Secret Revealed or something. I used to watch it with my mom when I was very young. So that's why I think it has to be the 90s. And it was a guy that had a black mask like this, and the wavy lines were like kind of white or something like that. So really deep cut. And I think it also plays into the fact that Eric Powell calls himself out for it on the next page, that he hasn't seen a superhero comic since the 90s. So again, lean into that 90s a little bit more. Get some more cross-hatching on here. But what he says here is that when drawing superhero comics, kids always put in big splash images whenever possible. Original art with giant action shots of well-known comic characters sells great on eBay. Heck, real storytelling takes time and effort, and that Xbox isn't going to play itself. So, big call out there for again what they were doing in the 90s and has still continued today, of the emphasis on the action splash page, just to kind of make it a big seller when they have to sell the original art, and the storytelling kind of falling behind. He also draws attention to these dramatic, nonsensical panel design and arrangements with these off-kilter square panels that are kind of shattering there. And he's reading from the script of the regulations of writing superheroes. Firstly, we must fight a petty villain, i.e. mugger, bank robber, jewel thief, cat burglar, and in mature reader comics, rapist, preferably in a warehouse or an alleyway. But before they do that, we have to get an origin change, because we have to reboot again mid-issue. So the new origin for the Goon, he's no longer from outer space. He says he was raised as a small black boy in a family of Puerto Rican Jews who believed Jesus was the Messiah. And Frankie says, "What's so special about that? My granny was a black lady." Goon replies, "That's even better, Frankie. Two characters from interracial families will get press all day long." And then the little narration box here is the editorial boxes. "This comic will now be condemned by conservative pundits and spread across the mainstream media. None of those things will be due to the quality of its content." So this is something that's continued also into today, where characters will get a new incarnation, where now they are no longer, I mean, pretty much every superhero started as just a white guy. So now we're introducing that diversity of characters, which is not a bad thing. I want to emphasize that. I'm not against diversifying characters, but there is something a little bit pandery. Well, it can be done very poorly, and it has been done very poorly in the past. For every time it's been done very well, it's also been done a little cringily. And I think that's what Eric Powell is calling out here. Also, I love the use of vector graphics tracing vector graphics for his backgrounds, and like the scale being completely off from it, because the focus is just on getting the accurate drawing of the building or the tank. So you've got this really tiny tank next to our oversized main character now, just filling the background and sky with stuff just to like show that off. But then down here, it's all, you can see you can see the mouse click of him like dropping and clicking the graphics in there. It's like it's incomplete. So silly. And then over here, this is probably the most 90s-ish I think Eric Powell gets to it. We finally get some proper cross-hatching on this costume. I mean, this looks like it's straight out of Spawn, honestly. I'm sure there was exactly a panel like that somewhere in Spawn. You got the big red cape and everything. But they found their alleyway where someone's trying to attack this lady. And after the rescue, there's, of course, the romance that cannot be, the near kiss that she pushes away from. And I love how absurd she's like skipping away. Her ankles are like barely even there. Like the body proportions are all off. And the Goon has a angst-ridden monologue, which they mark off on their checkboard, on their clipboard, because you got to hit all of the notes. But then, oh no, more danger. Gratuitous, unnecessary ass shots also sell really well on eBay. Yep, they certainly do. And that's another vestige of that 90s comics era where there was a lot of stuff like that that became prominent in the mainstream particularly. But before they go to rescue her, we got to get another costume change, and we got to get another origin change. So now he says, in my youth, amongst my tribe of warrior Eskimos, I was bitten by a radioactive narwhal. And from that day forward, I've known with great strength comes a crippling case of hemorrhoids. I don't know the purpose of this. They start saying like a superhero motto. They start with in brightest day and blackest night. I wish I may, I wish I might. First star I see tonight. And then it just cuts back in 5. And Eric Powell takes a shot at cartoonists again. A recent Harvard study shows that comic book artists spend 82.5% of their days searching for internet porn and 9.2% drawing comics. 67.9% of that porn was Asian, and 98.9% of it involved animals. 43.1% of those animals were horses. Just so petty. He's so mean. But I don't know. I mean, I guess he's considering himself, in part, he's poking fun at himself a little bit too, I imagine. We get the big action, another big action moment, crashing through the ship, and this is Dr. Alloy. This is like one of the only like real super villains of, I guess, the main Goon comic. But it's not done the way that a Marvel or DC would do it. And he talks about how he has cloned the Goon and created a multicolored army. They mixed them with a box of Crayola crayons. So now you've got the blue Goon, the red Goon, the yellow and the green, and then the black one. And they each have their own personality. So blue is full of despair. The red is a commie. The yellow one has to pee all the time. The green one is rich. The black one is emo. He says, "Leave me alone, Dad. The new My Chemical Romance just came out." And this is not funny, because My Chemical Romance is my favorite band of all time. And this comic came out in 2012. The last new My Chem album was 2010. So it was already 2 years old at this time, and they broke up after that. And I've been hoping for new My Chem music since then. And this is just too hurtful, Eric Powell. You went too far with this one. Goon has to fight all the big multicolored guys, so we get a big spread page, which is classic pose, classic kind of thing that you've seen in 100 different Marvel comics and so forth. And Frankie questions, the Goon questions, these characters are so inconsequential. Why did we even make multicolored Goons? And Frankie says, it's so we can get multiple variant covers out for this issue. And he says, oh, now you're cooking with gas. And this stood out to me. Dr. Alloy's holding up one of the comics saying, this is definitely a 10.0. Got to get this baby slabbed. That's something that I think has held up really, really well from this comic. Because 2012, I don't know when CGC started, but it had to be around then. Or maybe it was in its infancy. Because slabbing and like everyone grading comics, like the mania around it, didn't really become big until the panty hit. So it got so much worse. So like there's so many comics that are getting sent to be graded now that there's no reason to even be doing so. Like new release comics have no reason to be graded because they're all just new off the shelf. Just that sentimentality of, oh, I've got to get this slabbed. It could be a 10.0. That has held true, unfortunately, to this day. Goon goes to kill Dr. Alloy, but then he says, nope, you can't do that. You have to have an internal struggle about how killing is bad. And he gives that line, yeah, if I kill, it makes me no better than you, but I want it so bad. So Dr. Alloy escapes. Goon rescues the girl, but instead they still can't be together because on the next page, Goon has to reveal that now he is gay. And we get this disgusting panel that no one wanted. of the Goon and Frankie tongue kissing, but the media interest is off the charts, which is really all that matters to these publishers most of the time. Now a meteor has come. It's the same meteor that destroyed the Goon's home world, and he goes to destroy it, and Frankie double crosses him, shoots him in the back, killing him multiple times, multiple resurrections on the same page. Don't have to go into what that's making fun of for comics history. Pretty obvious. And it wraps up with the Goon and Frankie that we know and love looking at these new versions and saying, on second thought, I think I'll stick with this Goon. So that's the only foray the Goon has into true superheroics, similar to Marvel and DC. And again, if you're not familiar with the Goon, like the color palette here also very different than is usual. So he's playing with a lot of brighter colors. If I just flip through like the back of this this omnibus, you could see a lot of gray, a lot of muted colors. If it's not gray or green, it's usually like a muted red or a blue. That's kind of cool. And then yeah, offset with the rebooted Goon. So I love the Goon. I love this issue. I love this comic. And I hope that if you haven't checked it out, this issue might inspire you. I recommend any of the omnibuses that if you could find these, just grab one, pick it up, and read it and have a great time. Let me know your favorite issue of the Goon. Let me know if there's anything I missed in this comic that was worth pointing out. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. But now it's time to get back to reading.